Dzień dobry, assalamu alaikum, ciao, konnichiwa, guten morgen, bonjour, hola. How are you doing today? Ken at 10, good morning, good morning, good morning. I hope you're doing okay. The fuel chaos continues and it's awful, isn't it? I mean, what a nightmare it is out there. Just look at the streets, everywhere you go, everywhere's congested with the garages, just people just looking out, just trying to find fuel. And let's hope it all calms down very soon, because at the moment it's just mayhem out there, you know, people just trying to get their fuel. Understand most garages are now restricted to £30 per person, which seems fair given the circumstances. I think they should ban jerry cans personally as well, because it just doesn't seem fair that you've got people filling up when they've already got a tank full. But anyway, how are you today? Welcome. If you haven't been here before, then thank you. It's Tuesday, Ask JA Tuesday. And today we want to talk a little bit about auctions, because I've had a call come through from Ross and he's asking about what he should do regarding an auction property that he's seen, how it works and everything. And we often talk about this, but I just wanted to give you a few pointers, because when it comes to auctions, it's a completely different game. And what I mean by that is that when you buy a property through an agent, they have a duty of care and must disclose to you anything that is materially relevant to the sale of that property. When it comes to auctions, you take your chance in the room, be it virtual or actual, and there can be unusual reasons for a property being sold, such as subsidence, things that you might not expect, perhaps a halfway house next door, something like that. So you need to be careful and understand what it is you're buying. Also, when you're looking at auctions, bear in mind that the price that you see is not the same as the price that you often see on estate agents' details. This is a guide price. There are two different kinds of pricing when it comes to auctions. The first is the guide price and the second is the reserve price. Now, the reserve price is invisible and is typically 10% higher than the reserve that you see. So for instance, if you see a guide of 250, it's quite probable that the minimum price that that property can be sold at is 275. Sometimes things will be sold with no reserve, but generally speaking, there is a reserve. So although the price looks very low, that's the carrot. They dangle that carrot so that you get interested, enthusiastic, and turn up on the day. But be very careful, because if you're not careful, you can be a really busy fool. You can end up going through all the paperwork, consulting solicitors, having a survey done, and then finding on the day that it goes for significantly more than the price they're asking. You can check the auction results in various ways, and you know, it can be an idea to go to a few auctions, even if virtual, get a handle on what's going on with pricing so that you know what to expect. But most importantly, do your research. And there are a few things that you need to do if you're buying at auction. The first thing is to look at the seller's pack. When you sell a property at auction, attached to the actual lot display on the internet will be a seller's pack. You will need to register with the agent or auctioneer in order to get to it usually. And then you'll be able to download it. And in there, you'll find the usual property information questionnaires, normally the local search as well, together with any other pertinent information. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't do a survey. Of course, if you want to be belt and braces and be sure that what you're buying is of decent quality, then you should carry out a survey. And if you don't, you're running a risk there. If you know what you're looking at, that's fine, but you do need to be a little bit cautious on that as well. Also, you need your solicitor to look over that paperwork to make sure that the title is clean and clear and there are no unexpected or nasty surprises on the horizon for you. Particularly and specifically when it comes to leasehold properties, be careful about the length of the lease and also the level of the service charges, and also the projections for future service charges, which can have a massive impact on the final price that property will achieve at auction. And if you're not looking very carefully, you might miss it. So advice to you, if you're looking at auction, good luck to you. I hope you win it, but make sure you do your research first. You will need a solicitor in line first of all, because you'll want them to look over that seller's pack unless you know what you're looking at. Similarly, you'll need to line up a surveyor. The risk you have is that you line up the surveyor, you pay the solicitor, and of course, in the end, it's an auction. It may go for 100,000 more than you anticipate, in which case you've lost those monies. That's the rub. Other side of the coin, the beauty of auctions is hammer down, deal done. Literally, you have 28 days to come up with the money. That's a problem and a pressure on the one hand, but on the other hand, you're guaranteed that that property will be yours, and then on, you know, you can do what you like with it. You can be certain that 28 days on, that property is in your demise, and you can then go in there and do your work and move in whatever it is, as opposed to the usual, you know, 3-4 months before you can do that. So our advice, if you're looking at auctions, don't be fooled, do be wise. Consider, what I always say is that try and take the emotion out of it a little bit. That's difficult, I know, especially when you're seeing something and you love it. It becomes emotive, doesn't it? You think, I want it at all costs. Try and think before you start bidding in the room. Think to yourself, what's it worth as a maximum to you? At what point does it become, well, that's ridiculous, I'm not paying that? That's the point you want to stop bidding, at the point when you think, actually, that's enough. Another thing to watch for, be very, very careful. Most auctioneers also have a fee of some kind. So you need to check the pack to find out what the fee is in this instance, and it will be on their terms. Sometimes it could be as much as 2% of the sale price. Sometimes it can be zero. Sometimes it could be £1,000 or so. So just be very careful of the fees as well. Very important to look at that. So if you're thinking of buying at auction, think to yourself, there may be a reason it's in auction. There may be something unusual about it. Sometimes there's not. Sometimes it's just genuine. Sometimes we get clients come to us and say, we want to sell at auction because we just want the deal done. We've been let down by somebody. Let's just get on with it already, get that hammer down, get moving. And we can do that for you. We can facilitate that. And it's a great thing. It's a thing of beauty. If you use the open market where a bid's made, then you wait 3 months down the road and all the rest of it, you go to the auction, bang, hammer down, 28 days, money in bank. Fantastic process if you're used to the usual market in the UK, when you're talking 16 to 20 weeks before you see the money. Although there is a rub, of course, you're likely to get less than you would on the open market for reasons we've already discussed. Not everybody will be in a position to buy cash or with mortgage in place, and those that have a facility to get a mortgage might not want to risk doing that survey knowing that they might not end up with a property, let alone the legal work and everything else. So, lots of bits and pieces on auction to think about. It can be a great way to buy, but you need to know how it works. So think about that reserve price, think about the maximum you're prepared to pay, try and take the emotion out of it. Before you start bidding in that room, say to yourself, what is the maximum price I will pay for this property, before I actually think, no, now it's got to a stage where it's quite ridiculous and I'm just not prepared to go that much. So be careful and good luck, happy bidding. If you need any advice, of course, we're here for you. That's what we do. Property news today. Let's have a look at what's going on. There's an article in, it's funny, isn't it, how these journalists seem to get, it seems to be one journalist gets about 5 different headlines now in different papers. And today in the ITV News, the Times, the Mirror, the Mail and the Evening Standard, there's a house price is up £44 a day headline. This is a Zoopla headline. They do get a lot of press these days, Zoopla, don't they? Seems to me they get as much as Rightmove now, which, credit to them and their PR department. House prices increased by £44 per day on average in the 6 months leading up to August, according to an index from Zoopla. This is £30 a day up on the increase recorded between July 2020 and January 2021. The average house price in August was 235. With this a record high for Zoopla's index. The average property has seen its value climb by £17,508. Love the fact they put the £8. I'm surprised we haven't got the pennies on the end there. Since March 2020. The month that the UK saw its initial coronavirus lockdown, that figures from that 17,500. Graeme Gilmore, head of research at Zoopla, said that while demand coming from buyers is further to run, this will probably be balanced by the ending of government support for the economy via furlough and more challenging economic conditions overall. We expect the market to remain busy compared with historical norms and for price growth to remain in firmly positive territory at the end of the year, she added. The funny thing about house prices is when they're rising, everybody predicts that they're going to rise, and when they're falling, everybody predicts that the world is ending. You never hear the in-between bit, do you? Because that wouldn't be scandalous, wouldn't be enough of a headline. Headline is house prices up £44 a day. But what does that really mean to you? Has your price gone up £44 a day? Probably not. Actually depends where you live. And there are little macro markets within areas. So you have one area where you might find prices have gone up significantly, another area where they may have stayed still or even dropped slightly. And certainly certain kinds of property have gone up disproportionately with others. Anything with a garden now we find massively different from those without. Freehold, 3-bedroom family homes, massively in demand now all of a sudden. Also some of the more prestigious homes, they are going up in demand as well, whereas some of the smaller units, not quite so popular, but landlords and investors starting to come back in, which is encouraging. Energy efficient houses cost $40,000 more. This is an article in City AM, and it's analysis by Halifax, and it reveals that buyers of the most energy efficient homes are paying up to £40,000 more than those purchasing less sustainable options. The difference is an E compared to a C, and they're saying that's about 11,000. The greatest difference in price between a single EPC bands are those with G and F ratings, with the latter commanding almost 10,000 more on average. There was also a regional disparity, as areas with more new builds and flats were more likely to have higher energy efficiency rates. Of course, Tower Hamlets was top of the list for energy efficient homes. And of course, if you're in a flat and that flat has a flat on top of it and one each side, then its heat loss walls might only actually be one. And where you've only got one heat loss wall, that is a wall that's exposed to the outside elements. Of course, your energy efficiency is greater. Does that make it better? No, of course not. But it certainly makes it more energy efficient. That's why an area like Tower Hamlets with lots of flats will come out on top. An article in the Express shows properties are at an increasing risk of weather damage. Well, that's hardly surprising, is it, with all the floods and everything? Leading data scientist Sarah Applegate said, for anyone who hasn't already checked their home to make sure it's winter ready, now is the perfect time. Research found that almost a quarter of UK residents have experienced property damage, with the most common problem being damaged or removed roof tiles. Well, we've seen a bit of that as well, with lead going missing as well. Interesting one on the Nine Elms development. This, for me, is the most exciting development in London by a country mile, and has been for some time. We've now got the new tube lines in. We've got the Apple HQ there. It really is an exciting development. We've got the iconic Battersea Power Station towers there, just looking out at something very beautiful about it. And it's interesting to see this. The Hong Kong developers behind the Nine Elms regeneration in southwest London have borrowed £430 million from banks amid fears that the property crisis in China could hit projects in the UK. The loan will help enable RNF Properties and CC Land to cover the remaining costs related to the first phase of the project, which will involve the construction of 600 apartments. That's interesting to see that they're thinking about contagion, even from the Chinese property market. Well, we've seen it before, haven't we? But let's not go there. I don't think it's going to happen this time around. Not with the Chinese market. I think they're too far removed, but time will tell. Do you like Aldi? Well, if you don't, this is bad news. If you do, it's good. There's 100 new stores coming over the next 2 years. They really have been mega successful, haven't they? 2,000 jobs, and they're going to be all over the place. Really interesting that it's already repaid the full amount of its government business rate relief as well. So a real success story in difficult times, that. And Bailey, this is the Bank of England governor, sees a growing case for raising interest rates, noting that other members of the MPC, that's a monetary policy committee that decide these things, share this sentiment. In a speech to the Society of Professional Economists, he said, all of us believe that there will be a need for modest tightening of policy to be consistent with meeting inflation target sustainability over the medium term. Recent evidence appears to have strengthened that case, but there remain substantial uncertainties. We're monitoring the situation carefully. The bank last week increased its forecast for inflation at the end of 2021 to over 4%, far exceeding, well, actually doubling its 2% target rate. Although it expects the jump to be temporary, the bank said the case for higher rates seemed to have strengthened. Well, that's a case for, although this is not financial advice, I hasten to add, it's a good case for thinking about fixing your rate on your mortgage if you're staying put in the short term, because there is a lot of availability of money out there. It is at very good rates. If base rates go up, so do fixed rates. So if you're thinking of fixing and you're currently on a variable rate, it might be a good time to have a look at that. Not financial advice, just purely educational purposes. But if I were you, I'd be having a look at that. Apart from that, busy day today, lots of checkouts, new lets going on. We're getting to the stage where we're putting properties on the market for rental and they're renting very, very quickly because there's so little availability. There really is a massive gap in the market at the moment. So that's interesting to see. And I don't see it getting any better anytime soon, which is bad news for tenants. Good news for landlords as it forces prices and they can more readily select what tenants they're looking for. We'll keep you advised on that. But that's it for today. Hope you've enjoyed it. Stay safe. Look after your family and friends. We'll be back tomorrow with another Ken at 10. Until then, have a fantastic day.